Okay, so for this last video, I want to talk about two really important and I think really powerful concepts that will be very helpful as you go forward with this, right? Because it's easy to plan. It's a lot harder to follow through with the plan. I know that is definitely my issue. I love to plan. I love to have all these ideas for my future self. But then when it comes to doing it and the follow through, that can be the area where we struggle with. So I want to talk about how to manage that. So first of all, I want to talk about integrity and integrity with ourselves. So the definition of integrity, when I look it up online, it's the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness, and the state of being whole and undivided. Okay, so we're in integrity. So when I think about being in integrity, it's like being true to my word, being true to myself. When I think about, being in integrity with other people, right? If I say I'm going to do something, if I'm going to meet somebody somewhere, if I'm going to help somebody with something, I follow through with that, right? I want to be in integrity. I don't want to be that person that, says I'm going to meet you at 12 and then not show up, right? Most of us would agree with that. We do this in our jobs. We do this with our kids. We show up for our kids when we don't feel like it, right? This is part of integrity. And what's interesting is that a lot of times we do this for everybody else, but we don't do it for ourselves. So it's interesting to think about it in that way. If I think about being in a relationship with myself, how am I showing up in that relationship for myself, right? Am I doing a lot of things or saying I'm going to do a lot of things for myself and then not following through, right? So if I'm truly planning out things for myself that I believe from my higher brain, from my prefrontal cortex are good for me, that are going to help me get to my goal, to the place where I want to be, I'm planning them out, and then I'm not showing up for myself. I'm not doing those things, that I'm really not being in integrity with myself. And it's just an interesting way to look at it, because we are quick to kind of say, oh, it doesn't matter, but it does matter, right? It matters that you trust yourself. It matters that you work on building that trust with yourself. And so how do we do that? We do that just like we would with another relationship. We have to build that trust. So if you've lost that in yourself, if you don't trust yourself to get these things done, which I see with a lot of people, we do that by step, little things, showing up where we can, following through on our word to ourselves and seeing it in that way, right? Because sometimes we might say, oh, it doesn't really matter if I go to the gym. It doesn't really matter if I eat that salad. And in the grand scheme of things, is that one little thing, is it going to make all the difference? Maybe not in terms of the goal, but it makes a difference in terms of you building that trust and building that integrity with yourself and learning that you can rely on yourself, right? That is so huge. So that's one of the ways that I want you to look at this, okay? The second thing I want to talk about is, what if you fail, right? You plan out your protocol and you don't follow through. You plan out your protocol and you mess up. Okay. The tendency for most of us is to beat ourselves up. I'm going to do a quick screen share with you here. There's a link to this blog that I wrote, and I really want you to take a second to read it. It's really short. It's to the point. But the idea here is that what most of us do is we either don't try because we're so afraid to fail, or we fail and we beat ourselves up, right? And we feel like, if I'm not mean to myself, then I'll just keep doing it over and over. And the irony is, we just keep doing it over and over, right? And of course, it's scary to fail if you're going to be mean to yourself, right? So it's scary to fail, period, just as part of the human experience. But then when we add in, it's going to feel bad and I'm going to beat myself up, it really gets scary. But if we know it's not a big deal to fail, and in fact, failure is just my way of learning. It's just my way of building my skill set. It's just my way of gaining confidence. Then all of a sudden, we can decide to get our own back in the process, right? So if I'm supposed to eat one thing in my protocol and I mess up, a lot of times we think, if I don't beat myself up, I'll just keep doing it. But really, if we can catch ourselves on the other side and we can create a compassionate place and a curious place, like, whoa, what really happened? What was I thinking? Why did I do that? Again, from just a really curious energy, not from I'm bad and now I'm looking for proof of that. Then all of a sudden, we're more willing to try. We're more willing to fail because we've got our own back. Right? It's not going to be, we're not going to beat ourselves up and create more emotional pain on top of the failure. So that's really important. I talk about here, how we would treat a child when they fail, right? when they're trying something new. We don't get mad at them because they don't get it right away. And it's the same thing for us. Of course, we're not going to get it the first time. That's totally okay. That's part of the process. If I told you, look, you have to fail 100 times before you get to your goal weight. It's just part of the process. All of a sudden you would be excited to fail, right? You'd be like, yeah, let's start chalking up. Let's get through those 100 fails so I can get to the other side and really, be able to get to my goal weight, right? Versus looking at a failure and saying, this means I'm never going to be able to get it. This means I'm not good enough and I'm always going to fail, right? So it's a not subtle, it's a big shift in perspective around failure that can be really powerful, really, really helpful. So I don't even really feel like there's failure. I feel like there's just learning opportunities or we're succeeding, right? It's one of the two. Either way, we're moving towards the goal. But I want you to know failure is totally part of this. Expect it, anticipate it, but decide ahead of time how you're going to treat yourself when you, quote unquote, mess up, or when you fail, when you step on the scale and it's not down what you hoped it would be down, or it's up a pound. How are you going to manage those things, right? Because if you're beating yourself up, even though we think that's what it takes to get to the goal, it really is the opposite. The opposite is true. When we can be there for ourselves, we can have compassion for ourselves, when we can have our own back and then say, okay, let's just look at this objectively and decide what we need to learn from this and then move forward. That's when all of a sudden we start to really see the progress. So really work on that integrity piece with yourself, understanding that follow through is not about perfection, and it's not about like the thing itself having so much meaning, right? It's easy to say, like, again, well, it doesn't really matter if I go to the gym. It matters because you're building that integrity with yourself. You're building that trust in yourself. And then have your own back. When you fail, when you mess up, when the scale isn't where you want it to be, just decide, hey, I'm just learning. I'm figuring this out. I've got my own back. We're going to figure this out. It's going to be fine. Okay. So those are two really important shifts in thinking that I really want you to start incorporating and working on, that I think will serve you very well. All right, guys, I'll talk to you in the next one.